The letter came on a Tuesday. Plain envelope, no return address, just the HOA logo stamped crooked across the corner. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one line in bold. Remove the unauthorized structure. Attached to your front entryway within 10 days or face penalties. They meant the ramp. The one I built for my wife after her surgery. This is just the beginning of how my HOA tried to bully my family. If you want to see how this fight ends, make sure you subscribe right now and hit that bell. You won't believe what happened next. It wasn't some makeshift plywood slide. I'd hired a licensed contractor, got the proper city permit, even color matched it to the siding. The ramp was ADA compliant, clean, solid, and safer than the original stairs ever were. But to the HOA president, Marcia Glenn, it was apparently an aesthetic violation. That morning, she strutted across our driveway in her visor and clipboard, like she was auditioning for a reality show called Dictators of the Cul-de-Sac. "Mr. Landon," she said, tapping her pen, "you know our community standards. This isn't visually cohesive." I looked at her, then at my wife sitting by the window inside, leg-braced, pale from recovery. "You're talking about accessibility," I said. "Not decor." She smiled like I'd confirmed her point. "You'll want to take care of it before the fines start adding up." That was the moment I realized this wasn't about a ramp. It was about control. At first I thought it was a misunderstanding. Maybe a missed form, maybe the board didn't see the permit. So I made copies of everything. The contractor invoice, the building inspector's sign-off, even the email from the city zoning officer. I hand-delivered them to the HOA Dropbox and sent the same bundle by certified mail. 3 days later, we got another letter. This one said, "Non-compliance persists. HOA will authorize contractor removal at homeowner's expense." They were threatening to tear it out themselves. That night, I installed 2 extra cameras, one on the porch and one aimed at the driveway. I logged the footage to a cloud account, time-stamped and backed up. I wasn't taking chances. By the weekend, the harassment had started to spread. A neighbor happened to mention that Marcia was calling our home the pity porch. Another board member, Stan, left a note about declining property values. Someone even threw a handful of gravel onto our ramp, enough to make it a slipping hazard for my wife. That's when my calm started turning into strategy. Pulled out the HOA's bylaws, 57 pages of small print that most residents never read. But I did. I highlighted every clause about reasonable accommodation, architectural review process, and emergency accessibility modifications. Section 4.3c was the kicker. No alteration shall be deemed non-compliant if required for medical accessibility under state or federal law. ADA trumps HOA every time. On Monday morning, I sent Marcia a polite email. "Dear Ms. Glenn, the ramp complies with federal accessibility standards and city permit FARA 4887C. Any attempt to remove it would constitute a violation under ADA Title III and the Fair Housing Act. Regards, Sir Landon." No reply. But that evening, 2 HOA board members showed up at our property line with a tape measure and a camera. I stepped outside. "You looking for something?" Stan avoided my eyes. Marcia didn't. "Just confirming dimensions," she said. "Our enforcement officer will need photos for the file. Make sure your photos include this," I said, pointing at the city permit nailed beside the door. "You'll want that for the evidence pile." She didn't flinch. Just clicked another photo and walked off, gravel crunching under her flats. That's when I knew they weren't going to stop, so I started documenting everything. Dates, times, photos, recordings. I kept a separate binder labeled HOA Interactions and logged every encounter with bulletproof precision. I printed emails, attached USPS tracking receipts, even kept screenshots of the board's online forum, where Marcia called accessibility modifications optional. Tickle. Then I made a quiet call to a lawyer I'd worked with years ago, someone who specialized in property law and ADA compliance. He listened, then said, "They've stepped on a landmine. Don't react. Just record. Let them keep walking." And so I did. For the next 2 weeks, I played it cool, Stan, waved to the neighbors, trimmed my hedges, didn't give the HOA an inch of visible anger. But behind the scenes, my lawyer drafted the kind of letter that makes even a smug president choke on her coffee. When it hit their inboxes, certified, copied to the city, the county compliance office, and the state attorney general's ADA division. The quiet around our cul-de-sac was instant. The same neighbors who'd whispered about the eyesore suddenly avoided eye contact. Marcia's morning walk stopped. Stan stopped mowing near our boundary line, but that silence was just the calm before the real storm. Because the HOA wasn't backing down, they were regrouping, and their next move would take this from petty to personal. The first sign that things were about to escalate came on a Wednesday night, around 9:30. My doorbell cam pinged. Motion detected. When I checked the feed, I saw two silhouettes at the edge of the porch, flashlights. One of them shone the beam straight across the ramp, up the siding, then into the camera itself. The feed went white for a second, then came back. Marcia. And behind her, Stan holding a clipboard. They weren't supposed to be there. It was after hours, private property, and they didn't have any enforcement authority after sunset. The next morning, I downloaded the footage, backed it up on 3 drives, and emailed copies to my lawyer and the city's ADA coordinator. His reply came an hour later: good documentation. If they trespass again, file a police report and don't warn them. So I didn't. 3 days later, I caught them again. This time they'd parked 2 houses down, walked over pretending to check landscaping, and started snapping more photos of the ramp. Only this time they were measuring the slope. Marcia said something that the camera's mic picked up faintly. "We'll just classify it as a structure violation." That phrase sealed their fate, because the ADA has clear language. No HOA may classify an accessibility feature as a prohibited structure. My lawyer's grin when I told him said everything. "Keep collecting," he said. "They're building your case for you." I built my evidence wall, and every file, every photo, perfectly labeled. Cam footage held the time-stamped videos, bylaw violations, the highlighted rules they broke, communication logs, the emails and certified letters, and medical documentation, the doctor's note, and permit proving the ramp was necessary. Piece by piece, it became more than proof. It was leverage. Then I added something new: GPS trackers. I slipped an AirTag under the ramp's railing and another beneath my mailbox panel. I wasn't paranoid, just thorough. And sure enough, a week later, I got a location ping at 2 a.m. Someone had moved the mailbox cover. The AirTag tracked a slow path up the street, straight toward Marcia's house. The next morning, I walked calmly to her porch, AirTag app open on my phone. It pinged again, inside her garage. I took a screenshot, turned around, and called the sheriff's non-emergency line. By 10 a.m., a deputy was standing between us on her driveway. "Clipboard in hand, Mr. Landon," he said. "You're claiming theft of property from your mailbox." "Yes, sir." "I have a video of the act, GPS confirmation, and a federal regulation that classifies mail interference as a felony under 18 U.S.C., paragraph 1705. Marcia's face went pale. "It's a misunderstanding," she stammered. "I thought it was HOA correspondence." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "You took it from his mailbox?" Silence. He handed her a pink slip, official warning, and advised her to stay off my property unless invited. That night, I poured myself a small glass of bourbon and labeled another folder: Law Enforcement Intervention, but the HOA didn't retreat. They just got creative. Next came the newsletter. Their neatly folded community update slipped under everyone's door, with a paragraph that read, "Certain homeowners continue to violate community standards, risking our property values. The board appreciates patience as we restore uniformity." No names, but everyone knew my wife cried that night. "I just wanted to get to the garden without falling," she said. "That's when I decided we weren't playing defense anymore." I called my lawyer. "Let's make it public." He set up a meeting with a disability rights consultant and a federal housing mediator. They both agreed. The HOA's behavior wasn't just petty, it was discriminatory. So we drafted what he called the package. It included every permit and city approval, every time-stamped image, and the full video capturing both the trespass and the mailbox theft. I added the medical note confirming the ramp's necessity, and a detailed financial breakdown showing how the HOA's fines had blown past legal limits. Together, it wasn't just documentation, it was a case file ready to detonate. Then we attached a cover letter that began, "This is a notice of intent to pursue civil and federal action against the Willow Creek HOA and its acting president, Marcia Glenn, for violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Fair Housing Act, and local zoning regulations. We CC'd it to the county attorney, the Department of Justice ADA division, and the local paper. The paper bit first. 2 days later, a reporter left a voicemail. "Mr. Landon, we'd like your comment for a story on homeowners facing accessibility discrimination." I didn't call back. I didn't need to. The article ran anyway, quoting the letter verbatim. By that weekend, the HOA Facebook page had gone dark. And on Monday morning, I got an email titled "Emergency Board Meeting and Attendance Required." It was time for the showdown. The meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. sharp, inside the same community clubhouse where they'd once hosted summer barbecues and bingo nights. Now it felt like a courtroom. Fluorescent lights, folding chairs, the faint smell of chlorine from the pool outside. When I walked in, half the neighborhood was already seated. Marcia was at the head of the table, wearing her trademark visor and a nervous smile that didn't reach her eyes. Beside her sat the board attorney, a new face, shuffling papers he clearly hadn't had time to read. "Mr. Landon," Marcia began, trying to sound composed, "we appreciate your attendance. The board would like to discuss a resolution regarding the non-compliant structure on your property." I set a thick binder on the table. The thud echoed. "Before we discuss anything," I said, "I'd like this on record." My lawyer stood beside me, calm grey suit, wire-frame glasses. He opened his briefcase and began distributing packets, one to every board member. "This," he said, "is a line-item invoice for damages, attorney's fees, and civil penalties accumulated under ADA Title III and the Fair Housing Act." Marcia blinked. "Excuse me?" He continued, tone even. "You've engaged in discriminatory harassment, unauthorized property entry, and attempted removal of a federally protected accessibility feature. My client has video timestamps and witness statements to support every claim." He turned a page. "The total comes to $49,162.75, payable upon settlement, or we file Monday morning." You could have heard a pin drop. One of the board members coughed. Another whispered, "We didn't sign up for this." Marcia tried to recover. This isn't necessary. We were following HOA policy." "No," my lawyer cut in. "You were violating federal law. HOA policy doesn't override the ADA. You knew because my client notified you in writing, twice." He slid over a photo, the one from my doorbell cam showing her on my porch after dark. "Flashlight aimed at the ramp. This," he said, "is trespass with intent to remove an accessibility feature. That's not a policy check. That's intimidation." Her attorney shifted uncomfortably. "We'd like to discuss this privately." My lawyer smiled. "That's fine. We'll wait for your motion to dismiss, and the judge's reaction when he sees this folder." For the next 10 minutes they whispered among themselves while I sat back, silent. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The ramp gleamed through the window under the parking lot lights, smooth and steady, exactly what my wife needed. When they finally turned back, Marcia's voice had lost its polish. "The board has voted to rescind all fines and penalties against the Landon property," she said, "and to reimburse legal expenses up to $50,000. The room buzzed. A few neighbors clapped quietly. My lawyer nodded once. "We'll expect payment within 30 days. Then I leaned forward. "And one more thing. I want that newsletter retracted, publicly. You'll print a statement acknowledging that accessibility modifications are protected by law. Every homeowner deserves to know." She hesitated, then nodded. "Done." Outside, the night air felt cooler than it had in weeks. My wife waited in the car, window down, smiling faintly when she saw my face. "How bad was it?" she asked. I grinned. "Let's just say the ramp's officially permanent." She laughed, the first real laugh since her surgery. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived, this time on legal stationery instead of HOA letterhead. A check for $50,000. No note, no apology, just payment in full. Marcia resigned the same month. The board held emergency elections. Stan tried to run, but no one voted for him. And the next issue of the community newsletter opened with a bold headline, "Accessibility is a right, not a violation." Below it was a photo of my ramp, freshly sealed. sunlight glinting off the rail. These days I keep that binder tucked away in my office, labeled Case Closed. Every page is a reminder that silence isn't peace. Sometimes it's preparation. When neighbors ask what happened, I just tell them, don't pick fights with people who keep receipts. If you've ever faced an HOA that overstepped, or a neighbor who thought rules beat rights, drop your story in the comments. Let's make sure these power trips never go unchecked again.